Alright, this is it. This is the part where we kill Ace Hardlight. Again, spoilers, but first,
It's a very
what's on
special
DreadZone?
episode of DreadZone. Planet Stygia. It's a world ravaged by continual meteor storms. Why, if not for Stygia's powerful defense shield, the entire planet would be decimated in a matter of hours. But
Special
somebody
foreshadowing.
dismantled the shield's power supply. Who would
Hours?
do such a
Is
horrible
that
thing
accent
to the
Canadian?
poor people of Stygia?
I don't know. Again,
It's Space Canada.
Vox is voiced by Michael Bell, so I forgot it is
You know,
Canadian.
Theo, in this game, it actually would make sense for them to pull a Highlander 2 and have it so that they force the people from this planet to pay for the defense shield. It would serve as a nice satire of overexploitation.
Well, we already
hey.
had that in the first game with Sherman Drag.
Michael Bell's from Brooklyn.
Okay.
You know, it's funny. As a kid, this game felt much longer to me. As an adult, this game feels much shorter to me.
I can tell you, Jova,
It's
in
interesting.
general, a lot of Ratchet and Clank games are far, far shorter than one may remember. Not to a negative fault, you know. I honestly haven't found. I've pretty much played almost the entire series. I can tell I haven't found one that really overstays its welcome. You know.
Oh, exactly. That said, this one stands out in the sense that, you know, at least, yes, while the other Ratchet games did feel longer to me as a kid, like, this game felt like it lasted much, much, much longer. And as an adult, I've gone to, like, the complete opposite side of the spectrum with how long this game in particular feels. I feel it's noteworthy because, again, unless you're trying to, like, 100% complete or platinum this game, Deadlocked will probably be over quicker than you know it. Oh, sure, yeah, there are some bits where it drags out, but honestly, if you know the meta loops or whatnot, or, you know, the easy maneuvers, you will breeze through this game, especially if you get the upgrades as early as you can as well, too.
Not just that, also not necessarily grind, but something close to that with the weapons. You know, it encourages, again, the multiplayer focused nature really encourages you to replay a lot of missions and completing the side ones in order to gain as much point as possible.
I wouldn't be surprised if the reason for why the campaign feels so short is because they were focusing more on the multiplayer.
Yeah, I think we
'cause-
speculated a few parts ago that we felt it might have been tacked on, but to be fair, again, as bizarre and, you know, riddled with potential plot holes it is, this story still feels relatively elaborate enough to not just be an afterthought, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I'll give it credit. Unlike a lot of games that dedicated more to the multiplayer, the campaign itself at least feels like it could be worth a bang for your buck, for the most part. Like, I mean, okay, unlike a lot of multiplayer focused games where I'm like, oh yeah, no, the story was an afterthought, I can definitely believe that the story was definitely on their minds, even if it wasn't the main priority as, like, say, executively mandated. Like,
Hey,
I'd say this. Yeah. Like, I'll say it like this. Even if it feels like multiplayer may have been more so the priority, I can believe that that was more so executively mandated rather than the team didn't care about the campaign.
Will be hilarious if by the end of this part, Ace Hardlight, as he's about to die, says, "Ratchet, please, don't tell my mom." That would have been believable as a joke in this universe.
That actually would have been funny since this whole thing is televised anyway.
That says a lot about the quality of writing of Hayes. That again, it defies studying, basically. Jesus.
I will give Hayes this. The idea of conditioning soldiers to go after targets by making them hallucinate.
I mean,
that
Jova,
their
it was the late 2000s. It was a social commentary about the war on terror and the war in Iraq, basically.
It's funny though because Black Mirror, which was, well, okay, that specific episode of Black Mirror, which mirrors it, came out relatively later. It's funny, when I finally saw that episode, I thought, wait, did they get this idea straight from Hayes?
Well, while not necessarily tied to drugs and everything, Spec Ops: The Line also, you know, went in that direction. Arguably, did a better job.
Yeah, true. I feel like Spec Ops: The Line is probably the best example of that I've seen executed.
Alright, so now we're out of the vehicles and we need to control the nodes, connect the nodes, basically. Again, you can definitely see the progression in each world, you know. The best thing that I can say about this game is that if I just need to waste time and play something fun as a shooter, yeah, I can play this. Again, on the same point, I could just play any other of the game of the franchise that also has, you know, more quirkiness and a sense of humor. But again, if you tied me on a chair and told me that I was forced to play this, I will not really be suffering, technically.
I'd say it's a case of like.
The game's just really boring.
Okay, like, I mean, arguably it's more fun to play than it is to watch, but yes, even by Ratchet standards, this is one of the more boring ones. But I will agree with Tio that if I really had no other game to play, I wouldn't feel like I was suffering if this was the only game I had on me.
It's the same effect that waves as the two Prince of Persia Warrior Within. You know, as an experience on your own, it might be interesting because, you know, all the edge and everything, but because it dilutes its plot into long section where nothing happens and it's strictly pure arcade madness, it doesn't, you know, leave too much for, you know, for an MST3K or Rift Tracks kind of vibe.
In a lot of ways, it comes down to the context of a series. Sometimes what could feel like, you know, a great game is in many ways the weakest game in a specific franchise, essentially. Like, okay, one of the easiest things to compare, Ace Attorney, by video game standards, has great stories. That's why when we're talking about what's the best or worst of Ace Attorney cases, it's in the context of where they range on the spectrum with Ace Attorney, which, again, at base has good writing. Like, let me put it like this. I poke and prod a lot at Apollo Justice's story, but that story would probably entertain you more than, like, a ton of video game plots, if only because it feels more involved, engaging, and does have the base Ace Attorney gameplay that can give you a good enough time if you're really just in it for mystery solving and the courtroom contradiction bits. Conversely, we have, say, something like Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex, which some people might argue doesn't even really feel fun as a platformer in and of itself, but because the Crash series is definitely on the higher end of platforming, some people would probably be more likely to recommend you that than, say, a more niche title.
What are you talking about, Jerva? I love climbing really, really slowly on the
monkey bars
things above you.
Okay, has it been confirmed yet that the reason for that was because they were having trouble transitioning Crash over to PS2? Because I just can't fathom how you got something that was literally right there for you in Crash Bandicoot 3 and just made it slow as molasses.
Honestly, Jova, I do wonder if it was a problem on the hardware indeed, because I've seen a couple of other games where like ledge swinging, you know, ledge climbing and moving on it, or monkey bar swinging tends to actually be slowed down, you know. So
it is a possibility.
Yes,
well, remember Traveler's Tales only really had a year to do it.
That definitely would explain a lot. And if I recall correctly, the PS2 was kind of in its infancy, so, you know...
Well, the game was multi-plat. It was also made for the GameCube, so...
True. It was PS2 exclusive at first. It got released on those other ones later.
Okay.
Okay, if I recall correctly, was it one of those cases where it functioned best on GameCube, worst on PS2, like a lot of games at the time did?
Actually, apparently, I think, from what I can remember, the consensus seems to be it works best on Xbox, and it functions worse on GameCube.
Weird.
Wait, really? Usually it was the PS2 that stuff functioned the worst on.
Nope, apparently the GameCube version was even worse.
My guess is the GameCube port came in late in development. That's one explanation.
And that port was done by Eurocom, not Traveler's Tales.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Again, I think we mentioned in the past, but Eurocom tends to be a kind of a coin toss when they're actually handling something, whether a port or a game made on their own. So I can believe that.
Okay. In that case, the problem's easy to see there. Porting company may have flubbed the job, essentially. It happens a lot. It's one of the casualties of releasing something on many platforms, and don't get me wrong, I will always support the idea of something being available across the board here and there. However, it should be done with a company, you know, giving it the time and care that it needs.
Not just that, Jova, even when it's done internally, sometimes it might not even work, like with the Prince of Persia, you know, Sans trilogy ports on PS3 and Xbox 360.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it kind of goes without saying that, yeah, porting seems easy, but sadly, it's not as easy as one would think.
The interesting thing is that Night Dive Studios, the team that I mentioned a couple of times, that specialized in porting DOS or 3DO recently shooters, you know, trying to give them a new life on modern systems like PO'd or Killer, I think that's the name. Okay, forgot the name, but another type. For example, they did recently overall of the Thing video game, which in its base form it was almost completely unplayable. And this version, you know, they tried everything they can. It still has, you know, rough around the edges, but it's far better than just emulating the game, even with the fun hacks that were created. But the team said that they're now open of actually trying to work on games of the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, so who knows what's gonna happen.
I wonder if maybe a niche game companies could go for is making teams specifically for porting to specific systems or whatnot.
Well, again, originally that was why Bluepoint was even, you know, hired by Sony to actually work on fixing their shit that was not working for the PS3. So...
And Bluepoint do show that, you know, they were masters at it. Again, probably because that's what they were made for. So I wonder if maybe that's something that companies could stand to do more.
They weren't necessarily made for it. Like they originally started in 2005. They founded in 2005, and their first thing is that at the time PlayStation didn't really have any games that they were going to be at the launch for the PlayStation Network, digital games to launch on the PlayStation Network, right? And Bluepoint came to Sony, hey, we can easily make a game in a short amount of time and we'll be there on launch. There will be something you can have there. And they made a game called Blast Factor. It was the first ever digital game on the PlayStation Network.
Was it good?
It's a typical space shooter. Like there's nothing.
Most of the digital-only PlayStation Network exclusive games tend to actually be at least a good time, like Tokyo Jungle. So.
It's kind of remember, Joe, back in the early days of Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, a lot of the first few games were basically old school type games, like with an arcade mindset. Hence the name Xbox Live Arcade from the original 360.
Yeah, we talked about it when we did Mark of Ninja, because, you know, if you forgot that games like that at the time also still insisted on keeping stuff like the points score, mostly working because Xbox 360 had the leaderboard.
Yeah. What happened actually was that after that, when Santa Monica was busy with God of War 3, so they couldn't afford to take time to remaster the first two, and so it was actually Sony who suggested, hey, why don't you guys go talk to this Bluepoint studio? They seem like they're good at getting things done quick. So Bluepoint saw that as their big break to work on a popular franchise, so they took it. So,
and the rest is history.
Yeah. Especially with their best work on the PS3, in my opinion, are the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus remasters. Or even Ueda himself, after working with them on those remasters, specifically called them masters of their craft. So Ueda compliments them a lot, actually.
Apparently they're best at remaking and remastering stuff. Like, what apparently went wrong with that new original game they were trying to make?
No, it wasn't an original game. It was actually apparently it was a God of War live service game, which, as I'm sure Taylor will agree with me, is a stupid idea.
Again, I don't know who dropped the ball in there, if it was Jimbo, if it was Herman Holst, or someone internally at Bluepoint actually desiring to do that. For all we know, it might be an actual possibility. But it's also contradictory because the data theft of Insomniac did showcase a screenshot of what supposedly Bluepoint was doing, and it really felt like it was instead of original IP. I have no idea if it's still a game that they're actually developing right now, or it was the screenshot that was just, you know, proof of concept tied to that. It's a mystery.
Yeah, Is it possible that maybe it was a part of that God of War live service game?
Yes, it might
something
be.
completely new.
It's a bit complicated and slightly spoilery to say, but God of War Ragnarok further cements the whole existence of the different pantheons, and he adds actual proofs of their existence. Even you don't expect anything too great like a cameo from, I don't know, Quetzalcoatl or something like that, but there are tangible evidence of existence of that. So if I had to hazard a guess, the thought process might have been something akin to Smite, multiplayer-focused games that pits deities against each other, possibly.
No. Like I want to be fair. A live service game doesn't have to be terrible, and who knows? Like Tio mentioned, they could have maybe they maybe could have done something with that, for a God of War live service game, but.
I guess, but at the same time, I would much rather Bluepoint work on something that's more like.
Let me put it this way, Jova.
Well, that's what I was getting to. I don't see Bluepoint as a live service company.
Not just that. Let me put it this way. Again, I can genuinely believe it still might turn out an interesting story. I'm one of the few people who actually gave a shit about Ascension story, even at the end of the day, it's kind of just, by the way, this happened, type of deal. But again, at the best, I would just say that, well, it would have been a waste of time. And considering how long games tend to be made, be to be made these days, yeah, I would rather have priority be down to something else. Thank you.
Like the problem is that Sony were going way too gung ho on live service. Like, sure, yeah, you want to do a new 1 or 2, or maybe even 3, sure, but they had what was it, 6 or 11 planned?
I don't know.
Hell, even Nintendo seems to be kind of going up because now they've hired Front Software to make a multiplayer game.
Focused, yeah. It's still interesting to see how it will turn out. But even Hidetaka Miyazaki himself said, "No, guys, don't worry. We're not, doing just multiplayer games now. It's just that he did mention even before, right after Night Train released, that their company was actually doing quite a lot of multiple projects at the same time. So
sure.
We'll see.
I'm okay. Look, hold on.
No.
I thought it was gonna be. I'm more okay with Dusk Plus because it's a new IP. I just don't see the point of an Elden Ring multiplayer game.
It's apparently capitalizing on the popularity of the always co-op mode. Apparently Miyazaki even told that he took that in high consideration, basically.
I guess.
So you have to thank the PC fanbase for that.
I don't know.
Again,
I'm fine with it.
It might also be just Bandai Namco because again, there's the whole co-sharing or owning of the IP. Just wanting something quick to actually capitalize on that. I'd like to remind you, it's the same company that on the last legs of the Wii U decided to have a game that nobody gave a shit about, Lost Reavers, that was multiplayer focused, and I have no idea why. So,
forgot that game was a thing.
Dark Lord Shadow actually bothered to review it specifically because it was about to be released and was like, fuck it, use coverage for video game history to be preserved.
No, see, the thing is, to be fair, Santa Monica, Bluepoint has a history of God of War, the first HD collection, and of course they helped develop God of War Ragnarok. They were support studio for that game. So it's not like they don't have experience with God of War, they do. It's just the whole concept of them making I'm actually wondering, now that game has apparently been cancelled, I'm wondering what else they're making.
Again, only time will tell. We have to see and hope for the best. That's the only thing we can do with anything.
Okay, before the whole live service thing, did Bluepoint ever announce or hinted anything?
They were doing. Yes, they just did the Demon Souls remake, which No.
Sorry. Well, I'm wondering, did they hint at anything, after that?
Yeah, it's like about teases.
Okay.
Yes. Basically, they teased that they were working apparently on 2 projects, like Teo said. So we apparently now know that one of them was the God of War live service game, which has apparently been cancelled. So we have to wonder what is the other project.
Maybe it is that original IP. Probably we saw the screenshot in the data theft of Insomnia. Who knows?
It could be interesting to see them legit just try and make an original creation of their own.
That was one of the reasons why they joined PlayStation Studios, so they could have financial security to properly make one.
If I recall correctly, for this mission, one of your allies is actually trapped inside and you have to free him.
Hence the No Man Left Behind mission.
Again, you can definitely tell that they're also trying to give a bit of variety into the mission, even if they follow a simple, same kind of simple structure in multiple acts, usually 4 or 5 or something. You know, go to each location, something changes, you know, and you have to perform a specific test. In this case, you have to stand on the platform or on the button in order to lower the platform with your body inside it while, you know, being attacked multiple times. Again, it's interesting, at least on paper, actually taking advantage of that. It does remind me a lot of those, not necessarily make your own level editor, but a couple of old shooters had, like Marathon Infinity, but something close to that. This was also around the time where, you know, Quick and Doom modding had become a prominent thing, which ultimately would have led to the creation of stuff like Team Fortress, the original one, for example, and eventually the rise of the MOBAs. So, you know, I can definitely see Insomniac still being a fan of that and taking inspiration. I talked about that when we did Resistance, but yes, I can still definitely tell that the people at the team have grown up with classic shooters and wanted to, you know, still homages them and at the same time taking their own spin to that. It's certainly, like we said, a better gameplay-wise specifically, not necessarily story, but gameplay-wise, it's still a much better effort if you ask me about from that Halo, because again, weapon design aside, everything that Halo has done in terms of, you know, contribution to the FPS genre is rough. At best I can say that it aged poorly and, you know, it was just misguided, just doing it for its own and people took the wrong lesson. Man, in hindsight, it really, really was just opening the gates of hell.
Like, okay, I want to be fair to Halo. Halo is a product of its time in the sense that it needed to fix the problem at the time here. First-person shooters were adapted mainly for a computer. And what does a computer have that regular console gaming doesn't have? A whole ton more buttons and a mouse function, essentially. Which makes stuff like, you know, navigating your weapon wheels a lot easier, getting stuff quicker. Console gaming at that time was not as quick and snappy as it is nowadays.
If anything, shooters on console were considered basically the worst versions to play. Like all the... Again, it's not to say that there weren't, you know, valiant efforts. Like the PlayStation had a lot of ports of stuff like Doom, and even a couple of, you know, when shooters could not able to adapt, like Duke Nukem, they made different kinds, making them like Tomb Raider clones, for example. So there was an attempt, it's just that, you know, PC was better for that.
Yeah, it's a simple case that they were much more of a slog to play on console. So Halo at the time was revolutionary because it managed to adapt the shooter in a fashion that was perfect for the console market.
Meanwhile, back on DreadZone,
Shellshock, Reactor, and now Eviscerator. Cut down in their prime. Victims of that loathsome little lombax.
Dallas,
but just who is this Ratchet?
Our Vox News investigation has uncovered shocking untold stories from his dark, sinister, evil past. The destruction of civic property, illegal...
You know,
I mean, we needed to just get on the Megacorp, but yeah, whatever.
Destruction of civic property. Ratchet needed to smash those boxes to get bolts.
Hardlight.
Pretty much.
Ace Hardlight fans, prepare.
Also, because this is a pre-render cutscene, the actual, you know, transparent effect of the shades actually works out. Instead of actually being basically completely, you know, giving off the back of a head.
The galaxy is rooting for you. We're all rooting for you.
Thanks, babe.
Okay then. This also means that in the tournament we have to face properly now Ace Hardlight. The time has come and so have I.
You know, I know we probably have touched base on it, but it bears repeating. Like, these guys are knowingly hosting a villainous underground network, essentially, yet they're trying to portray Ratchet as the bad guy and Ace as the good guy, again, for an underground fighting network. Like, doesn't it kind of go without saying that you all are the bad guys, basically, as opposed to there being a
like
hero?
I said, I do wonder if the satire angle is about, how obviously stupid to the point of, madness TV executives can be with their decisions. Again, I
guess.
could believe that. We've seen time again. I made the example of classic Doctor Who in a previous part, but honestly, we have seen time and time again TV executive decisions of putting shows to die on the dev slot because there was a hot new thing in town, for example.
It would be funny if, like Futurama, they showcase kids obviously getting on the network when they really shouldn't, essentially. It's a high top network, but even the kids access it, claiming that they're adult, essentially.
Who knows? But yeah,
would explain then why they're trying to do the hero angle, but yeah, no. Halo did what was unthinkable at the time. It adapted shooters to a way that could work better for consoles. Tired of sifting through all those weapons? Well, here's a 2-weapon system that you can easily switch between with the press of a button. You have trouble aiming? Well, here's aim assist, essentially. Like, for all its problems that it has nowadays, Halo is basically the blueprint for how first-person shooters could work on console without needing the precision of a keyboard and mouse, essentially.
I will argue 007 GoldenEye in 1964 was a good first step on that regard. I mean, obviously...
It was, yes. It's just that Halo is, the big kahuna in that regard. Like, that's not to take away from GoldenEye, it's just that, well... it's kind of like how Betamax was arguably a step in home media, but most people just remember VHS nowadays. That said, regarding GoldenEye, what would you say it contributed the most in that regard?
Well, remember, first off, it actually did take advantage of the weird nature of the Nintendo 64 controller to its advantage by having the shooting be on the Z button as if it's an actual trigger that you're pressing on a gun, right? What it did is basically the game didn't have aim assist, but it was okay because the game was designed around it. Like it was relatively simple. There was still kind of like, okay, let me put it this way. Technically there was aim assist kind of, but it was like a very subtle kind of aim assist. Like it wasn't like in today's aim assist that we have in games today. It was more like the gun was slightly inched towards where the enemy was, but in a way where it didn't feel obvious.
If I remember correctly, it's also one that introduced the whole mechanic of stop and use the analog stick to move around the aiming reticule for precise aiming.
Or in that game's case, the C buttons, because the Nintendo only had one analog stick.
I still don't understand what kind of black magic and madness went into the creation of the N64 controller.
I swear, the N64 feels like it was made for somebody with free hands.
It almost okay. Again, it's mostly over exaggerating for the sake of comedy, but it almost resembles. It's the controller equivalent of an Eldritch Abomination to me. Already how I'm kind of sensitive to the whole symmetry that the PlayStation controller tends to have, and so already something like the Xbox controller with very weird separate. 2 analog stick actually kind of sends me. Now, the N64 controller, on the other hand, feels something dreadful in comparison. I don't know how people manage to... Okay, I would say I do not know how people manage to get along with that, but I do know for a fact that because of a couple of games actually gave carpal tunnel to people, so that's my answer.
So I'm guessing you're also not that big on the GameCube controller, since it doesn't have the symmetry?
No, not just that too, but also the yellow, smaller analog stick is hard as shit. Yeah, I don't know why is it like that.
Yeah, one thing that people never bring up, people always put the GameCube controller on the pedestal, but one thing that people never bring up is how the D-pad on that controller is ass. It's so tiny, and it feels so hard to use.
It definitely gets the vibe of Nintendo just wanted to make a very strange looking and colorful toy rather than an actual controller back then.
I think these days newer versions of the GameCube handle the the D panel a lot
Okay,
better.
I can tell you the one I tried was the Smash, related one for that was used for the Switch.
No, that one is just a perfect recreation of the GameCube controller. What there is, Jova, is 8-Bit Do, who are the masters of third-party controllers. They made an edited version of the GameCube controller that has a much better D-pad, fortunately.
All right, here we go.
Listen to that crowd, Juanita! It's nights like this that I'm glad I gave up my
again, Dallas is every
DreadZone's
single, molestation joke in a single person. He gets worse.
Get it? They can't sue him, though, because they're on an underground network.
Ace Hardlight!
And in the other corner, weighing in at 97 and a half pounds, most of it probably fluff or fat, Ratchet.
This is it, Runt. I almost wish it wasn't going to be over so quickly. Just try to keep it interesting while it lasts, would you?
Okay. Alright, as an actual boss fight, well, okay, I wouldn't say that Ace Hardlight could actually fit in for being the actual final boss of the game, but they definitely put some creative speed into it, because it starts relatively simple, as you can see, even if it has some attacks that mimic the ones of Dr. Nefarious, but then it does this shit, recovers a bunch of health and starts being more aggressive. It will do this a couple of times, then now creates clones of himself.
I normally don't like bosses
Hardlight. It's funny.
I normally don't like bosses that dig that, but to his credit, you can drain his health pretty quickly, so I'd say it evens out enough.
As you can see, yeah. And again, because I know actually how to put my mods into the weapons that I know, I prioritize, doing continuous damage. And also it kind of makes sense that he will have this kind of gimmick, being basically the top DreadZone player, so they will kind of try to do every single possible trick in the book, including potentially cheating.
I do think it would have been neat if they made him like a dark reflection of Ratchet's gameplay in that regard.
Well, again, I appreciate also the fact that he not made him a Captain Quark clone. Hardlight is an asshole, but still has his own identity even in gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You okay there, dude? You're sounding a bit like a caveman.
Adesso Liuzzo delivery for the character is just all over the place. I do wonder if originally they wanted to have Steve Blum, but decided to change that to the last second.
It does sound like they were trying to go for Steve Blum's voice. Have we ever seen David Hayter and Steve Blum in the same room, now that I think about it?
You kind of caught me off guard with that.
I mean, okay, I've always had this theory that... Again, this is mainly going off of David Hayter's voice for Solid Snake. I haven't heard him in much other stuff, but... Man,
but you might have remember, he got him to voice Polygon Man in PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale.
Oh, right! That was him!
For the record, well, okay, no, I will save that for another occasion. It's something like...
But yeah, no, like... David Hayter's Solid Snake voice sounds like he is going for a Steve Blum voice. Like, I feel like Steve Blum's voice is the kind of voice that's so iconic that other actors, unintentionally or intentionally, do try to model after it.
We get the extra 20 for you armor, a black jet one.
Ratchet! You can't beat me! You're just a...
Dude, man, is that you?
Dude, your models continues to skip frames.
Don't embarrass yourself.
Embarrass? Embarrass? I'm Ace Hardlight.
My eyes disappeared in my goggles, but my eyebrows popped
Well, okay,
through.
I would say that. The goggles do something, actually.
Do to you what he did to me.
Yeah, they make him clip in and out of reality, apparently.
Space is warped and time is bendable. Alright, now we are the number one, which means that finally Demon Box starts to actually get to the point, the hint.
My boy, you're the grand champion of DreadZone.
Well, at least the pre-rendered cutscenes should be fine.
Yeah, they've been actually so far. Honestly, kind of wish they just had the all the cutscenes being in this format, if that was the risk that they would have taken.
In the galaxy.
Right. So that's why your news show is slandering me every 6 seconds.
Slandering? Why, I was building up your bad boy image. And this is the thanks I get.
Whatever.
Now, don't be such a baby. I'm about to offer you the opportunity of 1,000 lifetimes. I'm making you the new captain of the Exterminators, the star of the show. Think of it. We'll make billions. We'll sell Ratchet action figures. Ratchet
Join me, Ratchet.
You know, here's my thing. I mean, yes, it's nice that he's approaching Ratchet about it, but my dude, given the sort of ring you run, you probably could have tried merchandising him before even asking him to join you.
Not just that, okay, taking aside the fact that Ratchet was clearly not buying into the shit in the first place because, you know, he was kidnapped. The fact that they had the smearing campaign basically seals the deal. Box is just that desperate at this point.
You just signed your own death warrant.
So we're done then.
Let him go.
Yes, sir?
We're going to need one final DreadZone campaign. Have them prepare that, experimental one we developed.
Sir, you don't mean the Gauntlet of Doom, do you?
Yes.
But sir, it was matter.
Yeah, this is where Vox villain stupidity also starts ramping up even more, in case you were wondering. But we're gonna find out soon enough, because, like he said, we're almost at the end of the game. So tune in next for the next part, where we go to a ghost ship, kinda, sorta. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.